Were the 60s all peace, love, and groovy vibes? Nah. Behind the flower crowns and guitars, you had bands that absolutely embodied the 7 deadly sins. But to have that balance, we're also gonna have bands that lived like saints. Or at least tried. Let's pit the sinners against the saints. One vice, one virtue, one band each. Still forgotten. Pride versus humility. The Rolling Stones. That's it. That's pride. Is being aware of self-dignity and how deep it goes. And to me, no band flexed harder with less shame. Mick Jagger walked around like he trademarked swagger itself. You may have heard at least one of their songs. Now, Mick didn't just walk on the stage, he owned it. That rooster chest puff, that devil-may-care sneer, it wasn't just part of the act, it was the act. Watching them now, I feel like they weren't just confident, they were daring you to match them. Keith Richards looked like he hadn't slept since '62, but every note he played dared you to find someone cooler. I've never seen the band so proudly loud, and somehow so right about it. But if the Stones were all ego, the Kinks were all soul. That's humility. No flash, no pyro, just storytelling in its rawest form. Ray Davies wrote songs that sounded like conversations I overheard growing up. Stuff about getting laid off, fighting with your brother, staring out a rainy window. The magic was subtle, but it hit deep. And while the Stones were making headlines, the Kinks were making sense. And you know what? The older I get, the more I appreciate the Kinks. They weren't trying to dominate, they were trying to connect. And they did. So while pride rushed in leather pants, humility sat quietly and let the music speak, and the adrenaline rushed. Maybe pride demands your attention, but humility, it made you listen. Greed versus generosity. Now, greed in the 60s wasn't front and center like it became in later decades, but it still showed up, slick and smiling. Most bands had a cause, a message, a movement, but the Monkees, they had a business plan. These guys weren't born in garages or coffee shops, they were born in casting calls. Built for TV, scripted, market tested, their creators didn't want artists, they wanted action figures with guitars. And the wild part? It worked too well. I remember watching the Monkees as a kid thinking, these guys aren't a band, they're a marketing fever dream. Songs, sitcoms, lunchboxes, cereal ads. If it had a surface, their face was on it. I'm a Believer didn't whisper romance, it shouted product placement. But here's the twist, they faked it so good, they somehow became the real deal. Still, let's not kid ourselves, they weren't chasing art. They were chasing paychecks wrapped in bell bottoms. If you love stories where pop culture gets weird, hit like, subscribe, and join the ride, because we're just getting started. Now, if we're talking about generosity, I gotta give it to the band. There was something so grounded about them, so communal. I remember the first time I heard The Wait, and it didn't feel like a song, it felt like a welcome sign. These weren't rock stars trying to flex, they were 5 guys trying to serve the song. While the Monkees were selling lunchboxes, the band was busy making music that sounded like it belonged to everyone. They weren't out front hogging the spotlight. Most people couldn't even name all 5 members. That's how selfless they were. You could feel it in the harmonies, in the way that they traded off verses like conversations among equals. They wrote about working folk, weary souls, and the human condition, and they did it with grace and grit. The band didn't just make music, they made space. Space for the listener, for the story, and for each other. That's generosity. Lust versus chastity. Lust in the 60s wasn't neon thongs and strip poles. It was all about suggestion. The glint in the eye, the sway in the hips, the lyrics that danced right up the line and winked. And no one winked harder than the Doors. Jim Morrison didn't just sing, he seduced. Every time he whispered, "Come on baby, light my fire," you knew he meant all of it. His voice was dark velvet wrapped around a cigarette. The guy once got arrested mid-show for getting too, let's just say enthusiastic. That's lust, baby. Now flip it to chastity. Pure, reserved, maybe a little square, but proud of it. And that's where Peter, Paul, and Mary come in. While Morrison was unbuttoning shirts, they were harmonizing about puffing magical dragons and blowing in the wind. Their vibe was more sit in a meadow than sweat on a motel floor. No scandals, no moaning vocals, just acoustic guitars, clean-cut looks, and the moral backbone of a Sunday school teacher. And to be completely honest with you, I love the theme myself. Also, I may be a little bit jealous that I couldn't witness it firsthand. Wrath versus patience. Rap doesn't need volume, it just needs fire. And The Who had rage in stereo. Pete Townshend didn't just strum his guitar, he assaulted it with windmill swings and raw defiant energy. Keith Moon wasn't just playing the drums, he was detonating them. Their live shows were chaos incarnate, often ending with smashed guitars, toppled drum kits, and shell-shocked roadies. That wasn't a performance, it was a tantrum set to music. Every track they released sounded like a threat wrapped in vinyl. My Generation was pure venom, angst, rebellion, and a middle finger to the status quo. They didn't want to entertain you, they wanted to challenge you, maybe even scare you a little. The Who didn't just play rap, they weaponized it. Now swing the pendulum all the way to Patience, and you land in the world of Simon and Garfunkel. While The Who were melting amps, Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel were crafting meditative soundscapes with delicate lyrics and haunting harmonies. Their music invites you to slow down and feel things. The sound of silence wasn't loud, but it echoed deeply. Bridge Over Troubled Water wasn't complex, but it carried emotional weight like a hymn. They didn't demand attention, they earned it with stillness and sincerity. Their voices blended with such grace, it felt like one mind split into two tones. They weren't there to shake the stage, they were there to hold space for reflection. Where The Who shattered, Simon and Garfunkel soothed. That's patience. That's power without noise. Sloth versus diligence. Sloth isn't laziness, it's coasting. It's doing just enough to get by never pushing the envelope. And in the 60s, no one coasted smoother than the Lovin' Spoonful. These guys weren't trying to start revolutions, they were just vibing. Their sound was mellow, their energy low effort in the best way. Songs like Do You Believe in Magic and Daydream felt like they were made from the couch in between naps. Nothing flashy, nothing demanding, just sunny afternoon soundtracks with a sprinkle of whimsy. Even their lyrics had that shrug it off energy, light, breezy, and borderline passive. Sloth isn't always a mess, sometimes it's just comfortably checked out. But diligence? That's a whole different beast, and it wore Hawaiian shirts and obsession like armor. That's the Beach Boys. On the surface, they look like poster boys for teenage kicks, surfboards, hot rods, sunshine. But underneath, Brian Wilson was conducting sonic symphonies. While the world saw beach bums, Wilson was losing sleep over chord progressions and sound textures. He wasn't chasing hits, he was chasing perfection. Pet Sounds was a masterclass in diligence. It didn't come together in a rush, it came together in agony. Endless studio takes, complex arrangements, new instruments no one has ever used in pop before. Wilson layered vocals like he was building a cathedral out of harmony. It was obsessive, it was exhausting, and it was genius. While Lovin' Spoonful coasted on charm, the Beach Boys built a legacy on sheer stubborn effort. Gluttony versus temperance. Gluttony isn't just about stuffing your face, it's excess in every form. And Cream? Oh dude, they overindulged in everything. Jack Bruce, Eric Clapton, and Ginger Baker turned every song into a stage for showing off. Their studio tracks stretched, and their live shows? Straight up marathons, 20-minute solos, unfiltered ego, and volume cranked to 11. Cream didn't play with limits, they blew right past them. It was all about more noise, more flash, more look at what I can do. And then there's Temperance, the cool composed cousin that knows when to stop. That's the Zombies. These guys didn't need chaos to make magic. Time of the Season is clean, measured, and smooth. No unnecessary fluff, no indulgent solos, just tight arrangement, haunting hooks, and chill precision. Where Cream jammed like maniacs, the Zombies played with control. They left space in their songs, space to breathe, to think, to feel. Cream devoured, the Zombies curated. That's the line between noise and nuance. Envy versus kindness. Envy is wanting what someone else has, and turning that want into a competition. And no one hustled envy into a career quite like the Byrds. They were the ultimate, we can top that band. When Dylan plugged in and shocked the folk scene, the Byrds said, cool story, let's turn it into a chart topper. The Byrds chased trends. They copied no one, but always adjusted to stay in the spotlight, shifting styles, chasing relevance, itching to win. Reinvention was their game, and they played it well. Buffalo Springfield took a quieter path. They weren't flashy, they were real. Songs like For What It's Worth didn't shout, They listened. They didn't chase solos, they built harmonies. Neil Young, Stephen Stills, and Richie Furay could have gone solo, but they chose unity. While the Byrds looked upwards, chasing fame, Buffalo Springfield looked inwards, searching for meaning. Their strength was subtle, kindness wrapped in lyrics, empathy built into every chord. One band pushed to rise, the other paused to reflect. And sometimes, reflection echoes louder than ambition. Which side are you on? Sinful chaos or heavenly harmony? Drop your take in the comments. And if this rocked your world, give it a like and share. And ever wonder which 70 bands crashed their careers instantly? Don't forget to subscribe to find out.